Thank you so much for coming, and good morning. I want to first start out by thanking all my reform-minded members of the House and the Senate that stand with me today. It's a pretty important day. Yesterday, the General Assembly took an important and necessary step forward to promote good government within Pennsylvania. We finally passed House Bill 1618, a government reform legislation that creates by law the Office of Inspector General. House Bill 1618 demonstrates the best in lawmaking, and I am proud to work on a bill that genuinely puts people first and values their contributions that taxpayers make to government. Considering the many divisive issues that the General Assembly has tackled over the last 2 years, I'm hopeful that we can put aside the differences and support legislation that does a number of things. Number one, this piece of legislation is nonpartisan. Number two, it is pro-taxpayer. Number three, it makes sure that programs and services that our state agencies are operating actually serve eligible people so that they get the help that they deserve. And lastly, it is built using national best practices. This is truly a win-win, which in the lawmaking business is a rare occurrence. House Bill 1618 is nonpartisan. It builds on a great idea that former Governor Casey first implemented, having an Office of Inspector General. Governor Casey saw the value of having a full-time watchdog define areas within the executive agencies where waste, fraud, and abuse may occur. House Bill 1618 would take Governor Casey's original executive order and make it law, enhancing the duties and the powers that go with that important post. There is no good reason why Pennsylvania is one of a very small minority of states that does not have this office established by law. To further promote bipartisanship, House Bill 1618 requires that 2/3 of the Senate approve the governor's nominee to Inspector General. What could be fairer than including both Republicans and Democrats in the General Assembly with the decision about who should serve as our Inspector General? An effort to show that this legislation was not meant to target Governor Wolf or his current Inspector General, House Bill 1618 also includes provisions would allow our current governor to continue his existing Inspector General, who would be able to continue to serve and would not be subject to the Senate confirmation. This was done because the legislation is not about Governor Wolf, and it's not about our current Inspector General. It's about public policy that promotes good government practices and catches and punishes those who cheat government and the taxpayers. Let me be clear, there is no grand conspiracy here, despite what some people may have you believe. When you consider these facts, number one, it's a Democrat idea. Number two, it was passed with a bipartisan vote confirmation. And number three, it exempts Governor Wolf. I find it hard to believe that anybody would argue that this is a partisan issue. House Bill 1618 is pro-taxpayer. Pennsylvania state government spends billions of dollars each year on worthwhile services and programs. However, we also know that there is not a limitless supply of resources to spend, something that's been well demonstrated over the past session during our budget debates. House Bill 1618 sends a strong and important signal to the people of Pennsylvania that we value their existing tax contributions, and we are doing all we can to make sure that their money is not wasted on fraud, waste, and abuse. House Bill 1618 ensures that people that we intend to get help are those who actually get the assistance. When people cheat, they don't just take needed resources away from faceless government agencies, they deny the opportunity to help those people who actually need assistance. That cannot be tolerated. Finally, House Bill 1618 is built on a national best practices. Included in the bill is the independence of the Inspector General. No Inspector General should ever fear that uncovering waste, fraud, or abuse could result in being dismissed from their job. The bill would also make sure that the independence of the Inspector General will be protected and the office cannot be used to advance political purposes. For example, the Inspector General could only be removed from office for cause, and he or she could not seek election nor accept appointment to a political office during the time they serve as the Inspector General or for 1 year afterwards. I want to acknowledge the good work that Senator Aument and Senator Argall have done to advance to help actually improve the piece of legislation. I think by sending this bill to Governor Wolf, we have sent a very strong and very important message. The General Assembly can take a great idea, in this case a Democrat one, approve upon it, and promote it for all interest of Pennsylvanians. Anyone who's picked up a newspaper or watched the news today is well aware of the very real challenges that Pennsylvania faces with regard to waste, fraud, and abuse. Do we really think it is okay to know that these things are happening and not work on them? This is exactly why Brad Bumstead, in his most recent book, Dealing with Corruption in Pennsylvania State Government, referenced this piece of legislation as a potential path forward to restore public trust in government. I agree with him and all those that oppose waste, fraud, and abuse in spending. Although Governor Wolf's press secretary has said this legislation was a waste of time, I am hopeful that Governor Wolf will not squander the opportunity to continue the good work that began under Governor Casey and that is being supported by conservative Republicans. By signing House Bill 1618 into law, Governor Wolf can truly have a fresh start and promote government that works to the benefit of every Pennsylvanian. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. Thank you and good morning. After being in Harrisburg for nearly 6 years now, I'm even more convinced today than I was when I first arrived here that we must change how we do business. I have advocated for budget process reforms, regulatory process reforms, legislative reform, and education reforms. It has been a real privilege for me to work the last year and a half with Representative Fee and my colleagues on this legislation to create the independent office of Inspector General. I'm extremely proud of the work that Mindy has done, the work that Senator Argall has done to improve this legislation and to advance this legislation through the General Assembly and to the governor's desk. I agree with her that we must do all that we can to value each and every taxpayer dollar spent, to ensure the citizens of this state can have full confidence that they have a government that works, to identify and eradicate waste, fraud, and abuse in state government. Today, we have Republicans standing together to applaud an idea first offered by Democratic Governor Robert P. Casey and to build on that idea. And I'm here today to ask Governor Wolf to sign this legislation. I have been frankly disappointed by some of the comments offered by members of his administration, and I would point out these are not comments offered by the governor himself. But he is in charge of his administration, and his power is derived from the people to serve the people. We've not been given power to protect the status quo, nor legislative or executive power for its own sake. The governor's administration has offered to the public primarily two reasons for their promised veto in recent days. First, as has been stated, a quote, waste of time, end quote. I do not believe that Governor Casey's efforts in 1987 to establish this office by executive order were a waste of time. I do not believe that the efforts of the Inspector General, as reported in 2014-2015, $87.6 million collected and saved through welfare fraud activities by investigating over 25,000 applications for benefits. I do not believe that is a waste of time. $22 million collected in reimbursement in collection. I do not believe that that is a waste of time. $2.5 million through the disqualification of future benefits for recipients criminally prosecuted for welfare fraud and through administrative disqualification hearings. I do not believe that that is a waste of time. $3.7 million collected in restitution by filing 833 criminal complaints. I do not believe that that is a waste of time. And doing all that we can to identify and eradicate waste, fraud, and abuse prior to asking hard-working families to pay more in taxes is most certainly not a waste of time. No one disagrees that this office could do even more with the enhanced powers that we seek to provide here. These enhanced powers should be preserved in statute, and they demand independence. Secondly, the administration has argued that this effort represents an attempt to erode executive power. Again, I'll say, power is derived from the people, and we have been lent this power to serve them. Let's be clear. Under Representative Fee's bill, the governor has the power to nominate the Inspector General. The Senate must advise and consent with a strong bipartisan 2/3 majority. These particular provisions, as have been stated, do not take place until the term of the next administration and the next Inspector General. This proposal can be, should be, and has always been intended to be a bipartisan effort. This bill is not, nor has it ever represented, a criticism of Governor Wolf or his administration. In fact, I began working on this legislation because I was extremely impressed with the governor's choice for Inspector General when he first took office. This legislation does not represent an erosion of executive power. It is a protection against the abuse of executive power for any administration, Republican or Democrat. I say to the governor, we have an opportunity to work together to ensure that we have a government that works for the people that we serve. Let's work together to build on national best practices and to be a national leader in government reform. Together, we can be a leader in reform and not corruption. Finally, it's great to be for things, but ultimately, we'll be judged on what we accomplish. Thank you.
Just add a couple of final points. There's no doubt that this is a good bill, a pro-taxpayer bill, and I certainly applaud all of these efforts to bring this to the governor's desk. I think we're all here to say the same thing. We need an effective Inspector General who will be a real watchdog for the taxpayers. In a bipartisan fashion, last week the Senate approved my amendment to this bill that would require, in conjunction with a budget appropriation, that the Inspector General hire more people, more staff with one purpose: to investigate possible waste, fraud, and abuse in the Department of Human Services and the Department of Health. Where did the idea come from? From a former Inspector General. Sitting in my office, we said, how do we need to change the law so that we can find more welfare fraud and divert more aid to the truly needy? And the Inspector General said, you don't need to change the law. I just need more resources. That's what my amendment to this bill does. In fiscal year 2014-2015, as has been noted, the Inspector General received over 17,000 tips. When we did the research, each welfare fraud investigator saves $1.2 million. $1.2 million each. It's been calculated that we save $12 for every dollar spent on welfare investigative and collective activities. And so we believe that this expanded program will pay for itself over and over and over again. Most importantly, we believe that then we can maintain the integrity of our social assistance programs by ensuring that the people who need it and deserve it get the help, and the cheaters get caught. I have yet to run into anyone, Republican, Democrat, or Independent, who says that they're in favor of welfare abuse. This bill contains provisions that are pro-taxpayer, will assist the Office of Inspector General with its mission, which in the governor's own words is to ensure the integrity, accountability, and public confidence in Pennsylvania government by preventing, investigating, and eliminating fraud, waste, and abuse and misconduct in agencies under the governor's jurisdiction. I seriously hope he signs this bill. It's a good piece of legislation, and I want to thank all of those who've been working so hard for so long to bring this forward.
Okay, we're going to conclude. I just want to take the time to thank everybody. Everybody's schedules are very busy, but this is a very important cause, and I appreciate everybody coming out to encourage Governor Wolf to sign this pro-taxpayer piece of legislation. So thanks so much.